Hello, and welcome to Unsheathed with your hosts, Kyle Gold and Cam Hirosaki. We hope that you enjoy the program. Please stick around afterwards. There'll be cake and blowjobs.
Hi, and welcome to Unsheathed number 39. I'm Kyle Gold.
I am Cam Hirosaki, enjoying a delicious glass of Riesling from Chateau Ste. Michelle up in Washington.
Washington State.
Yes, well, that's why it's up in.
Oh.
Otherwise,
Washington, D.C. is
east in.
North vertical of here. And we're proud to come back to you with a regular episode of Unsheathed. No odd or flustering surprises this time, unfortunately.
You'll find a way, I'm sure.
Well, I kind of think your constitution might not take two in 1 month, so
in a row.
we're going to keep it. We're going to keep it a little more normal today. But I again want to thank everybody who helped make Unsheathed Presents number 4 such fun for us, and that, of course, begins with my co-host Cam Hirosaki, who was a wonderful rudder-tailed sport about it all.
I am a little proud of myself for making it through that without, losing consciousness.
And also Kit, who helped from the technical end, and Zausch, who supplied the lovely illustration, which should all be posted up online now. I also posted the text of the story so people can read it if they don't have time to listen to a podcast. But
if you're not listening to it, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're missing out on half the fun.
You are.
Possibly more than half.
Because Hirosaki-san's reactions are just absolutely adorable. And I
haven't gone back to listen to it to myself yet.
It's very, very cute. He gets very squeaky in the beginning.
Yeah.
And unfortunately we didn't have a video camera, but I can tell you all that the visual reactions were priceless as well.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I actually I posted to the Unsheathed FA account my little account on exactly how you managed to pull all that off. So I won't go on about it here, but you can read that.
It's quite amusing, and we had a lot of fun with it. I think it's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing, though.
Yeah, it better be.
But otherwise, we've been working our little writer pause on our other projects.
Yep.
I'm revising Out of Position 2.
Right. And I'm first drafting my story, which in my journal I've announced my working title for it is Summerhill. I will tease you by not telling you what that means, but I'm looking forward to hopefully finishing my first draft of it within the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so.
Which we're all looking forward to. What I've seen of it, I really like so far.
Oh, thank you.
I think it should be a cool story. Out of Position 2 is coming along. I'm changing some characters around from the first draft and eliminating some scenes and rewriting some scenes, and I had to completely change the whole character's arcs and motivations, and that means rewriting just about every scene they appear in. So it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun because I get to see a better story come out the other side, and that's always gratifying. I did recently finish the draft of the Out of Position bonus story that I promised to write, and went through and revised it again, but I think I need to pass it to a couple people before I post it online, but you guys should be seeing that up in the next few weeks, I would say.
That wasn't Unsheathed Presents number 3?
No.
Oh, I thought it was.
No, that just happened to have a couple of
wow.
Out of Position characters. No. This is actually a different story, which
all right,
which I'll unveil later on as appropriate.
Man, you're just prolific, aren't you?
When I'm not writing 1,000 words a day on a novel, I have a little more time, and auto pause get in the way of the devil's work or something. So
apparently, I'm too busy stretching.
Kit, my paws are only occupied with you part of the day, but a very important part, the best part.
I will point out that right now Kyle's powers are not where I can see them.
Sadly, Kit's all the way over on the other side of the room, but
which makes you wonder even more, doesn't it, folks?
He is the tech-savvy wolf. If he could have come up with some kind of a little in-studio wormhole that allows me to have my paws down sort of the back of this chair and coming up somewhere else. Kid says we'll fix it in post.
Oh, I bet you will. I don't know what that means. No.
We'll fix it in post. Okay. Just as a sort of a language aside, I don't have the aversion to the verb fix that a lot of people seem to ascribe to furries. Like, I've talked to furries, and I'm like, I'll fix that right up for you. And they're like, don't use the word fix around a furry.
Really? People do that?
Oh, yeah.
I have never come across that.
Yeah. I've had, it's kind of like the gay people that are like, go gaily forward.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so I don't.
That's like overactivism.
I kind of feel.
Why would you have an aversion to the word fix? We're not pets. Well, all right, some of us probably think of ourselves as such, but on the whole.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's kind of a dogs and cats thing, and it doesn't really apply to wild animals. And
I never heard of anyone fixing a river otter.
I think it's just
we ain't broken. Well, after
you were last week.
Chirp, chirp.
But no, I think it's just one of those things where, and it kind of applies to the way people tell their stories too, in that it's kind of one of those extra details that is just a little too much over the top, and I think people do it to try to make themselves seem that much more furry, or maybe they just look for meaning in every word that they pick, and that one, I'm not calling out people who do that. If a word bothers you, then it bothers you. But I'm just saying, don't expect me to be bothered by it because I'm a furry, because it doesn't mean that to me.
Yeah, it's like I made a tweet the other day about how I feel guilty whenever I use the word sheath in a non-erotic context in furry writing.
Didn't you have a story where actually, you and I had a conversation about this, which led to one of my Christmas stories.
Oh. Wait, which one? You've written a few.
You were at a Starbucks with...
Oh, God.
And one of your coworkers said, "Oh, the Christmas sheaths are back."
That's right. And yeah, I allowed myself a moment to happily think about that mental image.
And I think that led to my Miracle on 34th Sheath story, because that gave me the title, and then I started IMing you a conversation that two furs were having about who gave better blowjobs, and
that was a nice story, actually.
And that became a story. Well, I do enjoy writing about blowjobs, so.
So say we all.
Yes. The greater good. So that's what we're all up to. Still thinking about a live show sometime this summer. Seems like people are going to be around June and July, so maybe sometime in there. And other than that, we got some questions to talk about. So
yep, all right. And getting back to the show, yep. We are unsheathed. Our term for intercourse is yiffing, and we have
and you email your questions, by the way, to unsheathedpodcast@gmail.com, because somebody owns the domain unsheathed@gmail, and we're not quite sure what they do with it. There's also an Unsheathed on Twitter, though. I found out.
Uh-oh.
It's just someone who posts. They don't seem to have a business or anything. They just call themselves Unsheathed. I kind of want to write them and say, do you realize that you've taken the name of a gay adult furry podcast? But on the other hand, I kind of don't, because maybe they had it before we did.
Or maybe they didn't.
Or maybe they didn't. But anyway, go ahead with the question.
Yes. So, hey, Kyle and Cam. I'm considering being a writer, but since I'm inexperienced, at the moment I'm sticking to reading stories like yours a lot. However, I suppose you could call me a picky wolf, as I mainly only like stories with certain characters in terms of species and looks. Yet, I also don't want to miss out on a great story just because it has a species that does not make me feel as immersed for my own reasons. For example of a minor change, in Kyle's story Waterways, I found it hard to imagine a black fox, who knows why, so I changed him in my mind to a red fox. Now my question is, do you think this breaks the story in most cases, or feel awkward that somebody changing their story around, even if it's within their own mind? Or do you even encourage this to make it more enjoyable to read? P.S. I have no idea if there's an official name people use for this. Thanks, Tasteless Wolf.
I don't know if there's an official name, but I think there should be one.
Yeah, that's very like Neil Gaiman of it. Like, is there a word for this? There should be.
Yeah.
If I'm saying if you find it hard to imagine a black fox, there's a picture of him on the cover.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can see what he looks like.
But at the same time, I know we've both heard from fans who are like that, who say, I can't appreciate, or I can appreciate a story, but in order for me to really like a story, it has to be with a species that I'm attracted to.
See, now, my question on that is this specifically about erotic stories or stories in general? Because if you're not going to... I think the idea of not reading a story because, like, oh, this, story's about a coyote and I don't like coyotes, so I'm not going to read it. That kind of... As a writer, that makes my hackles raise, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah, but I do understand it. I mean, there was a story that I read many years ago about some goats. I think they were the goats or sheep. Mm-hmm. And they were sort of the more intelligent civilization, and they were always under attack by the wolves, who were the savage carnivores. And it was the story of a war between these wolves and the sheep, and ultimately, the wolves were portrayed as barbaric savages, and eventually the sheep win, and there's slaughter of wolves and stuff. And while I appreciated the story, and I enjoyed it, and it was well written and all that, I did have kind of a visceral emotional response to it, because I found myself a little bit identifying with the wolves. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of the opposite of something like, there's stories that are poorly written, but there's elements about them that I connect to and I enjoy. And I can say, well, it's not a very good story, but I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I almost get it more in a sexual context than in a non-sexual one. Like, all right, as a furry, I will say, there are certain species to which I am more attracted than others. And, there are certain ones
that you are not attracted to.
Yeah, and, there are certain ones that, and in a non-sexual sense, there are species that I identify with more than, than others. Like you were saying, like identifying more closely with wolves than with, sheep. I mean, I can understand what that's like, too. But, if somebody says, hey, this is a good story, but then it's like, oh, yeah, but I'm not going to fap to it because it includes species Y instead of species Z, then I'm just like, well, are you doing yourself a disservice there? As for whether it's okay to change your imagination to not fit what the author's trying to say, that's kind of a little bit of a touchy point, too. But
yeah, I think it depends, and I was kind of thinking of that. I mean, in my works, when I conceive of a character, the species is part of that.
Yeah.
And I know there's examples that you and I have seen, actually one fairly recently that we're not going to talk about, but in which the species were not really important at all. And it's... for me, it's the species is always a part of how I imagine the character, and so it's always something that I try to get across. And just from on a personal level, if I hear, well, I've replaced this species with one in my own imagination, then I think, well, in a sense, I feel like I didn't do my job, because I made it interchangeable enough that someone can go out and just say, oh, well, I don't want Samaki to be a black fox, I want him to be a giraffe. And I'm just going to imagine the story with him as a giraffe. And I think, well, if they can do that, then I think I did something wrong.
Like, what's Samaki doing in a swimming pool if he's a giraffe?
Drowning. But on the other hand...
imagining him as a different color.
Yeah, that doesn't bother me as much. Yeah. But on the other hand, too, and we I think we've touched upon this, but we may not have actually talked about it very much. All stories are a contract between the author and the reader.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah.
And I'm only bringing a part of the story to you. You supply the other part of the story yourself, and you draw on your own life experiences. You draw on the parts of the story that appeal to you and speak to you, and the story that you fashion in your head from what I've written down on paper. Well, I'll back up. The story that ends up written down on paper is only a part of what I'm envisioning in my head, and hopefully it conveys enough of it to let someone else get most of that story. But the story that you have in your head is only partly driven by what's on the paper, and you fill in the blanks from your own experiences. And so in that sense, I kind of feel like, well, if it helps you enjoy the story more to imagine Samaki as a red fox, then yeah, why not?
Yeah, and I can see that. I think there's always the desire for the writer to want the reader to see things the way that the writer wants them to be seen. But
Right.
there's some of that. As for the whole thing about he's considering being a writer, but he's going to start just by reading a lot, I approve of that wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
And
And
I would encourage, don't just read stories with species that you think are physically attractive.
and I would say read outside the furry fandom.
Yeah.
And learn. This is the hard part, but we have talked about this a lot. Learn to read critically, and what that means is read a story, read something that you like, and then read the story again, and go through it and say. There's usually going to be a point in the story where you say, this is where it got really good.
Yeah.
And examine that and look at it from a technical level and see how did the author get you to that point and what about it makes it really good. Because it's not just the words in that paragraph that made it really good. One of my favorite examples of that is a book by P.G. Wodehouse, who is amazingly funny. And I was about 12 or 13 chapters into the book, and one of the chapters ends with this phrase that one character says to another, and it just killed me. It was so funny. And Kit asked me, "Oh, what's so funny?" And I realized I can't just read him that phrase. I'd have to read him the entire book, because it drew on everything that had been set up in the past 12 chapters, and it had come to this point. And all these elements of the farce had all come together at this one moment.
This is why writing humor is really difficult.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
It's
because
so hard.
You need to have the right setup. I mean, like I'm sure I've mentioned on the show before that people write humor because they think it's easy, and I think it's probably the hardest thing to write.
Yeah. And, I mean, by comparison, sex is kind of hard, but it's easier. It's easier than humor. I mean, just because sex and humor are two things that are really personal to everybody. What turns you on is likely to be pretty unique. Things you find funny are likely to be really unique. And it's so hard to get to write something humorous that's broad enough to make everybody laugh.
I noticed that, and I think that actually the picture for Unsheathed Presents number 4 illustrates that well. Because it wasn't just me, but I noticed other people. It's like, oh God, the way that little curl in the tail. It's like, which isn't even a sexual detail, but that's the sort of thing that people will just pick up on. And it's just little tiny things like that just really affect, it's like your own mental filter on what you think is enjoyable.
And I was actually thinking about that, as I was thinking about that picture, because when we posted it earlier today, that something that makes Zausch such a good artist is not necessarily the detail that he puts into the sex or the positions of sex that he puts in. It's the things like the expression. It's the things like those little curls of the tail. It's the things like the little paw under the balls. And it's the little details. And because, anybody can draw a drippy cock. Okay. Most people can. I'm just going to back myself right out of that one. But
as opposed to back yourself right onto that one. Oh, swish.
Kit's still working on that technology. But it is those little details, and the fact that he can put those details into a picture and have it be something that lots of people key in on is pretty cool. And that same kind of thing applies with humor, where, we're fans of 30 Rock, and the broad underpinnings of that comedy are pretty common, but the little twists that they can put on top of it are what really make that show unique. And the fact that they are able to keep doing it and make it funny to a lot of people
and
is
it is in the
really
specific,
impressive.
And it is in the specific details and the self-referential things where it's like, oh, if you didn't see this thing 3 episodes ago, this joke wouldn't be nearly as funny now because of it.
But they're doing what Arrested Development did, which is each episode is individually funny. They just get funnier when you know all the back references.
Right.
Because we've shown episodes of 30 Rock to like... I think we showed one to B-Hop when he was down here for the recording. We've showed him to a bunch of other people and had people who are like, yeah, I kind of heard about it, but I've never really watched it. And we'll show them a couple episodes and they'll be like, wow, I have to start watching this. It's amazing.
Yeah. Like my parents for the longest time was like, do you watch 30 Rock? Do you watch 30 Rock? And I'm like, no. And like, you know, when your parents are recommending something, you're like, okay, like, you know, you think your parents think they understand you, but they usually don't. My parents actually know me better than I give them credit for. And so, like, when I finally did start watching it, I'm just like, why wasn't I watching this all these years? And I'm like, oh, people were trying to get me to it. I just wasn't.
One last thing. Kit brought up a question. He asked me, why did I choose a black fox for Waterways? And what did that mean to the story? And the short answer is I chose a black fox because the friend who wanted me to write the story said it should be a black fox.
Cop out. But well, not really.
But in a more realistic sense, what it meant to the story is he's a fox, but he's a little different. He's not unique. He's not like a gold fox, because you know those would be
or a purple fox or a teal fox.
I'm thinking back to the... Did you ever hear the Deep Thoughts?
Oh, with Jack Handy?
Yeah. It's like, it's a pity there's not such a thing as a golden skunk, because I bet you'd be proud to be sprayed by one. So there's not such a thing as a golden fox, but there are black foxes, and they're kind of rare, although ecologically they didn't used to be as rare. It's just their fur was more prized, and so they got overhunted, and now they're very rare. But they're making a comeback because people aren't hunting them for their fur anymore. So anyway, you have these black foxes, which are about between 10 and 25% of the population, depending on where you are.
Yeah. Biology lesson, black foxes are red foxes that are just black.
Yes. It's called a different color phase.
Yeah.
There are 3 primary phases of red fox coloration.
And Samaki's the only member of his family who is black, right?
He is.
Yeah.
And so it was intended to kind of set him apart from...
And the only one who dates boys.
The rest of the family, right. He's the black fox of the family. And
I see what you did there.
So that was the rationale behind that. Right. So in the context of that story, it was important. So, right. And so Kit's point is, if a reader makes it a red fox, that kind of removes that level of detail from the overall story that I was trying to tell, which is true. But again, there have been readers who will tell me that, you know, they got X and Y and Z out of a story, and I'm like, but didn't you read that part of the story where it specifically contradicted that? And they're like, oh, yeah, I just kind of ignored that.
It's like being a comic books fan.
Yeah.
It's like, this issue sucked. I'm going to pretend it didn't happen.
Oh, God, we're not going to go into it, but we were talking about continuity between different writers writing the same heroes in different books, like different writers on X-Men and stuff. We were talking about that this weekend, and it just amuses us.
If you're a fan of...
Let's never do that, Cam.
I will say that if you are the sort of person who's into comics and would like, you know, can appreciate tearing apart the bad aspects of comics, I would suggest checking out this fellow who posts under the name Linkara, Linkara. He sort of does...
Where does he post?
He has his own blog, and he also has like a sub-site on thatguywiththeglasses.com.
Okay.
Who hosts...
So if you just Google his name, it'll come up.
Yeah, just type in Linkara, and you'll find it. And he does sort of like a video blog where he'll pull apart bad comics writing. It's actually...
Awesome.
It is as enlightening as it is funny, especially if you're into comics.
All right. Well, I hope we've met Tasteless Wolf's letter, although I will say that we need to come up with a term for replacing a species with another species in your head. I had a friend who just called it personal editing. But he was using it in a broader term of like when he watches movies, he personally edits them so that he's watching a different movie.
I'm thinking like...
Which is how Reign of Fire he thought was great.
I'm thinking like psychotransmorphism or something and trying to come up with a...
See, I was thinking reanimaling.
Damn it, now you have the Reanimator song stuck in my head. You bitch.
Ha, ha, ha.
I'll drink wine, you read an email.
All right. Getting the characters from point... this is from Power Stinger and is talking about the story that we've challenged him to write. Getting the characters from point A to F was actually easy enough. The thing that got hard for me, was upon reaching point F was, well, what would they do? That and exactly what kind of added ingredient would this lube have? I think I managed to answer both questions in a satisfactory manner, plus I think I was able to pile on the hotness as well. While getting Hirosaki to get his rudder to swish is, apparently, easy, I'm kind of looking to get your tail to wag, Kyle. No idea what does. Hasn't been listening to the podcast much.
I'm not that easy.
But I always strive to put out a good story, even if sometimes when some people randomly tell me how much they enjoyed my story, I feel just a bit uncomfortable. You can turn off those notifications from the website. I'll just say that.
Which I did.
Oh, and most importantly, as of the time of this writing, I have 2,215 words. Yay! I'm actually kind of proud of myself, especially since I didn't get my 200 words down every day. I still managed to put down the 200 and put out something I think I can be proud of. The story's not finished yet, but I'm going to see if maybe I can finish it, then come back to it and make some changes and edit it or something. Maybe I can submit that to your little draft editing episode. Who knows?
That's a good idea.
Anyway, challenge complete, and I hope to finish this particular challenge story within the next week or so. I'm always eager for feedback, so don't be afraid of letting me know how I did. Perhaps a third challenge on the way. I kind of think these are fun. Witty regards, Pyro Blowjobber.
Is he a blowjobber or a blowjobby?
Apparently he's blowjobber, which is kind of interesting because he professes to be a straight boy. Straight boys really don't give blowjobs.
Oh, please, have you ever looked at Craigslist?
Clearly not. I have a wolf. And I'm a little bitch, too, apparently. But
you said it, not me.
So we're looking forward to seeing the story. We'd love to use it as the draft editing example. And speaking of which, we're looking for other people to send in stories. I forget who we called out, actually. We called out all our K listeners, I think.
Yeah, we called out
Condrel.
We called out Condrel. We called out Pyre. I don't think we specifically called out Kaz, but we should. So let's do it now.
Yeah, and Foosball, actually, we should call out too.
Mr. Hacksaw himself.
Yes, Mr. Eep Squeep.
Mr. Eep Squeak, motherfucker. I need to get Kit to break out like the sample file and just give me that as like a clip so I can actually put that as like a thing on my phone. Oh,
Kit wants to do a whole bunch of sound bites.
Does he really?
Yeah, I think he wants to do your what's going on from last week.
That I haven't actually gone back and re-listened to it yet. I'm going to have to do that.
You will.
I do listen to every episode of this show when it's done. But I've just been so behind on my podcast lately.
Yeah, I've been listening to the last few actually.
I need to listen. The next one in queue is the one where we had Foosball on, actually.
Right. Yeah, I started listening to that one. The problem is that I have a lot of podcasts that I like to listen to and not a lot of time. And
same here.
As I've said to someone, I have a lot of podcasts I want to listen to where I don't know what's going to be said next. So
like I can't listen to a podcast and really do other things because I need to listen to it.
Right.
Because if you're not listening to it, you don't catch it.
I listen to mine at the gym usually.
You know what? That would be a good excuse for me to take up a gym membership.
Wow, there you go.
Get my rudder swisher back in gear.
So we're looking forward to seeing what Pyro has for us, and we're looking forward to seeing what other people are sending in as first drafts compared to final drafts, or first drafts compared to second drafts. And I thought I would also throw in here, because we hadn't read it, but just a refresher in case people hadn't heard, that Pyro had asked us to ask our listeners for a new name, because he's trying to come up with a new name to go under. And so the next few letters all address that.
Yep.
So fear not, Pyro, we have some names for you. You can pick which one you like.
Well, speaking of Candrel, here's an email from Candrel. Greetings again, dear pen wigglers. I must say that I derived great pleasure from the Rat's debut on your podcast. But halfway through the ordeal, he seemed to loosen up, and everything was smooth gliding from there. Wow, Candrel, you are good at the entendres here. His pointedly different design sank quite...
I think he was listening to last week's podcast.
I don't know if that was so smooth. That was a lot of effort. Look at that picture. His pointedly different design sank quite pleasantly into your otherwise light performance, and the show had me eagerly anticipating every moment of oral manipulation. That's oral with an AU.
Oral.
Oral. The rural jur. But on to business. First, to your lupine listener upon whom we should be bestowing a label, that's referring to Pyro, my immediate response was P-Fang. Now, I'm no baller. My hobbies lie elsewhere. Oh, I think that your writing proves elsewhere. But it seems like a wolf needs a moniker that speaks to the feral side. I'm such a bitch, I'm sorry.
We both are today.
Second, it came up in the episode that skill with editing is as important, or more, than with writing, and with some hesitation, I believe I agree. To that effect, though, there's another side to refining a story that every writer I've met suffers from, even though they unanimously deny it. I speak of the ability to accept criticism and the willingness to incorporate outside ideas into your precious story. I know that I've become emotionally attached to a story before, to the point that I'd almost rather bin it than actually change the way I'd written it. I'd still like to think that I'm beyond being hurt by constructive criticism these days, and to a large extent it's true. Still, on occasion, I'll write in a scene or character that is destined for the cut, but whom I love too much to see die such an ignoble death. Do you guys, including guests if there is one this week, no, have any examples of criticism that hurt to take, and or stories that are too close to your heart to change, even though you know they desperately need it? A turncoat from the Temple of Tongue, Candrel. I wouldn't say that we unanimously deny being able to accept criticism. I think it's most common in novice writers, but I think that everyone has to grow up someday.
I'm not sure what... I think he means they deny that they have a problem accepting criticism.
Oh, it's sort of like, no, I'm okay. When you're like holding
I'm okay
back
with it, but really deep down inside, you're like, don't touch my story and I'll chop your hand off.
I was going to say, deep
like
down...
Like a guy waving from a helicopter.
I was going to say, deep down inside, you're playing Everybody Hurts on the back of your head. No, I agree. I think that the ability to accept constructive criticism is hugely important for a learning writer.
And honestly, I'm going to say most writers do have that reaction, and I'm not sure that they'd unanimously deny that it hurts and that there are times when they don't want to take the criticism. A lot of writers that I've read dealing with that subject say things like, take the criticism, don't say anything, go sulk about it, or throw things against the wall, or kick the sofa, or kick the cat, or whatever you do when you're upset, and then calm down and ask yourself, is it going to make the story better?
Humanitarian alert, don't kick the cat.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it's
I meant Normal, not Garfield.
I hate you, Normal. No. Sorry.
But honestly, that is what the phrase "murder your darlings" is talking about. When there's, like you're saying, you write in a scene or a character that is destined for the cut, but you're just too attached to. And I take issue with that phrase, with some interpretations of that phrase, because some people say "murder your darlings" means anything you wrote that you just really, really love, you have to get rid of because your love is blinding you to the fact that it's helping your story or not. And I don't agree with that because we've talked about this before. If you take out of your story all the things you love, then A, you're going to be much less motivated to work on the story, and B, it's going to show. And what are your readers going to love if you don't put in the things that you love?
Yeah, so it's like, by that logic, it should be like, well, don't date anyone that you're really, really into because your love for them is just blinding you to how much of a jerk they are.
But, I come across things like that. There was a line that I cut from the Out of Position draft, which I will, in which one character was asking, asking about Thanksgiving and said, "How does your boyfriend like his stuffing?" And I just thought, "Oh, that's so cool! I need to keep that in. It's so funny. It makes me laugh." And then I looked at it again, and I was like, "But it doesn't work in the context. It doesn't belong in the story." So now I get to use it and get all of you to laugh about it.
I don't know if it's making me laugh. It's making me switch my rudder. Which is apparently really easy. Like me. I hate you, Normal.
I will say about last week's story that the main objection that Kit brought up to it was, would we really need to go to all that work to get you worked up? I mean, couldn't we just send you home and have a 7-foot-tall buff wolf in your apartment? Wouldn't that be enough?
I am not that easy to, trigger into receptive mating, to use a, Discovery Channel term.
But 7-foot-tall wolf, big white buff wolf.
Yeah, but what if it was a really long day? I'd been at work for 10 hours and didn't have any coffee.
And you wouldn't want him to give you a massage?
Yeah, a massage maybe. It was it's going to be too much work to take a foot-long cock. I'm just going to lie down and you can just rub my shoulders until I fall asleep. I'll get you in the morning maybe. Thanks, sweetie.
That's not nearly as fun a story.
Right, which is why I think that the point of intentionally working me up helps. It builds in the safety net.
So noted.
Oh, snap. And I'm already out of wine, I do declare.
As far as a piece of criticism that really hurt, people have generally been pretty good. I want to say the people that I talk to with their critiques have been overall really helpful with the criticism and have said, these are the things I really like, but I don't think this scene helps the story. And maybe sometimes I'll be like, but I really like it and I want to keep it in, but you're right.
Yeah.
And usually I see what they mean. Foosball Hack sawed a story of mine apart, but none of that really hurt because I know he was doing it from a really good fundamentals
He does that out of
standpoint.
love. Well, no, he does it out of hate, but
he does it out of hate, but he doesn't do it
out of spite.
Out of spite, yeah. And he does it equally to everyone. So,
yeah, actually,
and when I say everyone, he says, occasionally in the right mood, I'll do it to Hemingway too. So,
oh wow.
So I felt okay about it after that.
Actually, my most relevant piece of deep criticism also involves foosball, which is, when I sent him this story I'd written, and he's like, this is a cool idea, but you didn't do nearly enough with it, and it's not awesome enough. So I was like, all right, fine, fuck you, I'll turn it into a novel. Bam.
Right. Which is a good...
Eat it, foosball.
But that's not a kind of hurtful criticism. That's this is a really good idea and you need to write more of it. That doesn't really hurt.
Well, it was more like oh, God damn it, don't make me do work, foosball. This story was done when I sent it to you, and now it isn't. You undid all my work.
Yeah,
you son of a bitch.
Still.
I love you, foos.
But, as far as stories that are too close to your heart to change, I mean, really the only stories that would qualify for that are things that I would personally have written for Kit. The stories that you and I have written back and forth about each other, because those are just personal. I mean, they're meant for an audience of one or two. And
or the 250 people who watch RFA.
Right. Well, the fact
Tell
that
your
they
friends, add us on FA.
the fact that they can enjoy it too. Yeah. Add us on FA. You get to see Zouch pictures now.
Yes.
But honestly, you get to a point where you say, okay, I really love that story, but I can write another one. And when you've gone through that so many times, it's scary, but you start to trust yourself or to the universe or whatever. And I had a mentor a long time ago who said, trust in the universe. The universe will put the right things in your path. You just have to recognize them, which has really very little to do with this, but I just like to say it from time to time.
I was going to say, you learned from Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I knew him as Ben, but the important thing is, if a story's that close to your heart, then don't take criticism about it. I mean, and you don't have to publish it. Show it to the people it's meant for. If it's not that close to your heart, you can write another one.
Yeah.
And you should keep writing another one. Learn and write and learn and write and learn and write. Because the worst thing you can do is make the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah. Keep doing it. You will learn eventually.
So, thank you, Conrad. And we got 2 short letters to wrap up with. Both suggestions for our Pyro Stinger name challenge. The first one is from Normain. And he says, as for the little challenge with a new name for Pyro, I was thinking of just using the letters in his name. Pyro Stinger equals Ron Spy Tiger. Just a thought. So there you go. Ron Spy Tiger.
Oh, you're going to get all species confused with that, though.
Yeah, well, maybe it could be Ron Tiger Spy, and then he could be like a wolf in tiger clothing.
Or a wolf who spies on tigers.
In tiger clothing.
Oh, mer.
We saw a guy in tiger clothing today, and he wasn't a furry. Well, as far as we know. And the second one is from NotTube, and he says, hey, y'all, shouldn't it be Burn Bee? Just seems natural. Because Pyro, Stinger, Burn, Bee. And I should say that NotTube also unofficially this weekend suggested P Burn, but...
Was it P Sting?
Well, P Stain was that sort of came out of that name, but P Burn was the first one. And we love NotTube.
That's unfortunate.
NotTube has caught up with the podcast now, so we can have him on again.
Oh, hey, there we go.
So we should do that maybe next week or the week after. We'll look at our questions and see what we've got.
I will point out that your baller name does not have to start with, the letter doesn't need to be the first letter of your actual name.
That's true.
Rikoshi's baller name is J-Pup.
J-Pup.
Yes.
That's very cute. When did he get that?
Well, I heard Buck Hopper mention it.
Oh, okay. Oh, because didn't Rikoshi do a voice on his podcast or something?
He recorded. I'm not sure if it's been aired yet, though.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all our letters. We're going to try to keep it a little bit short this week. Kit rolls his eyes.
Compared to the last few weeks, we're a little shorter.
We've got email account, unsheathedpodcast@gmail.com. We have an FA account under Unsheathed. We've got Twitter accounts. I'm Kyle Gold, all one word.
Cam Hirosaki, Twitter.
And
LiveJournal, FA.
I'm Kyle Gold on LiveJournal. I'm Kyle on FA, just Kyell. And it's under my Kyle account that you can find the text of Unsheathed Presents number 4 if you want to read that. There were a couple little lines that got missed. Cam's swishing his rudder. So cute. But thank you all for writing in, and you guys out there that we called out, and you guys out there that we didn't call out, give us examples of work you've edited and how the final draft came out. And keep on writing.
Keep on writing. Keep on reading.
I'm Kyle Gold.
I am Cam Hirosaki.
Good night.